The habits of 2 decades still clung to me. Waking up in a strange man's bed was one thing. Waking up and instinctively reaching for a rosary that wasn't there, that was another. His breath was warm on my neck, a heavy, unfamiliar weight. The morning light, a harsh intruder, streamed through unfamiliar blinds. I blinked, trying to piece together the hours, the decisions that led me here. The scent of coffee from downstairs felt alien, almost sinful. It was a world away from the silent chapel, from morning prayers. My old life felt like a ghost, haunting the edges of this new, wild existence. Every day was a question, every choice, a tremor. My name is Sarah. For 20 years I was Sister Agnes. My life was ordered, quiet, beautiful in its own way. The convent walls were my world, a sanctuary from the noise outside. I joined young, barely out of my teens, convinced I had found my true calling. There was a deep, sacred comfort in the routine. The cool stone floors underfoot, the muted light filtering through stained glass, the ancient hymns sung in unison. It was a profound sense of belonging. I believed, truly believed, I was serving God, fulfilling a divine purpose. My days were filled with purpose, teaching the younger novices, tending the herb gardens, singing the daily offices. I had no worldly possessions, no personal ambitions beyond spiritual growth, just a quiet, unwavering dedication. The outside world, with its frantic pace and endless desires, felt distant, almost irrelevant. It was a life of simple truths. Yet sometimes, late at night, a whisper would break through the silence. I'd stare out my window at the distant city lights, twinkling like forgotten promises, like a life I'd chosen not to live. A tiny flicker of curiosity would stir, quickly hushed by guilt. This is enough, I'd tell myself. You are enough here. But a small, almost imperceptible crack had begun to form in the foundation of my certainty. A quiet question, barely a whisper, started to surface. What if enough wasn't what I truly needed from a life? The shift started subtly with Father Michael. He was new to our parish, younger than most, with a vibrant energy that somehow felt out of place, yet undeniably compelling. He organized a new outreach program for the homeless in the city. Sister Catherine and I were tasked with coordinating the kitchen, preparing meals twice a week. It meant leaving the convent grounds more often, interacting with people beyond our usual circle. He spoke differently, not just in sermons, but in casual conversation. He talked about life outside, about human struggles that felt raw and unfiltered, not filtered through theological texts. One afternoon, he found me alone in the kitchen, peeling potatoes. "Sister Agnes," he said, his voice soft, "you have a kindness in your eyes I don't often see." It was a simple compliment, but it landed strangely. No one had ever spoken to me quite like that before, not with such direct personal observation. A blush warmed my cheeks. I looked down, embarrassed, but a strange warmth spread through me. It wasn't inappropriate, not really, but it felt different. I started to notice the way his hands moved when he spoke, the easy laugh lines around his eyes. He talked about his life before the seminary, a life I could barely imagine. He spoke of choices, not just callings. And slowly, imperceptibly, the walls of my understanding began to thin. The world outside, through his eyes, seemed less like a temptation and more like an invitation. An invitation I hadn't realized I was longing for. Our conversations became longer, straying from parish work to personal stories. We'd linger after meetings, or he'd find an excuse to drop by the kitchen when no one else was around. He spoke of his own doubts, his own moments of questioning. "Sometimes, Agnes," he confessed one evening, his voice barely a whisper, "I wonder if I'm truly serving God or just serving a role." His vulnerability was disarming. I found myself sharing things I hadn't vocalized in years, small frustrations, old dreams. It felt dangerous, exhilarating. One time, Mother Superior walked past just as he was handing me a book, a secular novel, not a religious text. My heart pounded. I quickly hid it under my apron. She just smiled. Father Michael, always encouraging reading. But her eyes lingered a moment too long on my flushed face. The thrill of these stolen moments was potent, Each shared glance, each hushed word, felt like a precious secret, a tiny rebellion. I started to look forward to his visits with an eagerness that terrified me. Guilt gnawed at me constantly. I'd pray harder, repent for thoughts I couldn't name, but the prayers felt hollow. The image of his smile, the sound of his voice, would intrude even during Mass. I found myself questioning everything. Was this truly God's path for me? This quiet, selfless existence, when my heart felt so alive, so full of a different kind of longing. One evening, he waited for me outside the kitchen after everyone else had left. The streetlights cast long shadows. "Agnes," he said, his voice low, "there's something happening between us." My breath caught. I couldn't deny it. "I know," I whispered back, my voice barely audible. He reached out, his hand hovering, almost touching my arm, then pulled back. The air crackled with unspoken words, with a tension that was both terrifying and utterly captivating. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that I was on the edge of something irreversible. The tension finally broke one rainy Tuesday. We were organizing donations in the parish hall, the only two people there. The smell of damp earth and old books filled the air. He turned from a box of clothes, his expression serious. "Agnes," he began, his voice rough, "I can't pretend anymore. I'm falling for you." My entire world tilted. The words hung in the air, heavy and true. My vows, my 20 years, my entire identity, suddenly felt flimsy, like a veil easily torn. I looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw not just a priest, but a man, vulnerable and courageous. And in that moment, I realized I felt it too. The love, the longing, the terrifying desire for a life I had sworn off. I didn't say anything. I just stepped towards him, slow and deliberate, my heart thrumming. He met me halfway. His arms went around me, gentle at first, then tighter, pulling me close. It was a silent embrace, but it spoke volumes. It was a confession, a promise, an absolute betrayal of everything I had been. The rain outside seemed to amplify the silence in the hall, sealing our secret, our choice. I knew then that there was no turning back. The path I had been on, the life I had built, was gone. It had ended in that embrace, in that silent acknowledgement of a different kind of truth. Telling Mother Superior was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Her face, usually so serene, crumpled with disappointment, then with a deep, aching sadness. "Sister Agnes," she whispered, her voice cracking, "are you truly sure you are letting God go?" Her words were a knife, twisting in my gut. My sisters, once my family, looked at me with a mixture of pity and judgment. Some cried, others turned away. The silence of the convent, once a comfort, became a crushing weight, filled with unspoken accusations. Leaving was like stepping off a cliff. The outside world was a dizzying assault of choices, of noise, of expectations I didn't understand. Simple things, like choosing what to wear, felt monumental. I was stripped bare, not just of my habit, but of my identity. I was no longer Sister Agnes, but just Sarah. And Sarah had no idea who she was or how to navigate this new, bewildering freedom. Father Michael, now just Michael, had also left the priesthood. We were two lost souls, clinging to each other in a storm. The initial euphoria of our shared freedom slowly gave way to the harsh realities of rebuilding. There was no grand plan, just a day-to-day struggle to survive, to define ourselves outside the structures that had shaped us. His guilt was a heavy cloak, and mine, a persistent whisper. We loved each other, I think, but the weight of our choices, the lives we had abandoned, created a rift, a permanent shadow between us. The fear of being judged, of being discovered, never truly left me. Every new person I met felt like a potential accuser, every kind look, a challenge to my fragile new existence. The quiet joy I'd imagined, the simple happiness of a life outside the walls, felt elusive, buried under layers of regret and uncertainty. Michael and I, we didn't last. The love was real, but it couldn't sustain the burden of our shared past, the unspoken sacrifices. We were too broken, too changed by what we had done and what we had given up. We drifted apart, amicably, regretfully. I moved to a small town, far from the city, far from any reminders. I found a job in a library, surrounded by stories of other lives, other choices. The quiet still calls to me, but it's a different kind of quiet now. It's the quiet of solitude, not sanctuary. I still carry the scars. The loss of my faith, the ache for the community I abandoned. Sometimes I still catch myself, ready to genuflect, or to say a prayer I no longer believe. The woman I was, Sister Agnes, is a ghost that walks beside me. But I am also Sarah, the woman who chose her own path, however messy and painful. I learned that freedom isn't just about what you gain, but what you lose. And sometimes, the hardest truth is that even the right choice can leave you profoundly, irrevocably broken. I found my voice, yes, but I often wonder if the silence I left behind was the only place it truly belonged.